Who is the best player in the world? Does Nikola Jokic keep that title, or did Luka or Giannis steal it? Where do the aging greats like LeBron and Curry rank, and did the rising stars like Ant and Brunson snatch their chains? After a historic rookie season, just how good is Victor Wembanyama? This was a great year, but many players made their marks, but let's not waste any more time. Notable honorable mentions are Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, John Collins, Cam Thomas, Grayson Allen, Al Horford, Malcolm Brogdon, Derrick Jones Jr., Kelly Oubre Jr., Norman Powell, Andrew Nembhard, and Jaime Jaquez Jr. 100 is Jabari Smith Jr., a lengthy, young 3-and-D wing for the Houston Rockets. At 6'11 and just 21 years old, Smith has loads of potential but already succeeds heavily in his role. And though his lack of self-creation compared to Paolo and Chet may make him look disappointing, he's a key player for the bright Houston future. Isaiah Hartenstein slots in at 99th, and though not everything he did shows up on the stat sheet, he was one of the most impactful players for a talented Knicks team. Hartenstein is an excellent screen setter, offensive rebounder, and very smart with the ball. He could finish inside but was also a great rim protector, skyrocketing his value in free agency. Trey Murphy gets 98th, and though his season wasn't crazy, he does deserve a top 100 spot. Murphy missed the start of the year and came off the bench for a majority of the season, but remains one of the best shooters in the league and a great defender. He also scored 16 in the playoff clinching win against Sacramento. Malik Monk at 97th is one of the most exciting players. Monk is a fireball with a chance to go crazy at any point and completely take over a game. The Sixth Man of the Year candidate did go down with a sprained MCL in late March, and his impact was shown as Sacramento went 5-7 after the game and lost in the play-in. Mitchell Robinson at 96 couldn't show all his talent this year as he fought injuries and only played 31 games, but his inside prowess is game-breaking. Robinson is one of the best shot blockers in the league and a great finisher inside. New York missed him a lot in the playoffs, and if Hartenstein returns, will be one of the best center duos in the league. Nick Claxton is 95th as another great rim protector. He averaged over 2 blocks in the last few years and is a great offensive player as he racked up assists for a player of his role. Claxton will be one of the most wanted big men in free agency and could get drawn away from Brooklyn. At 94 is D'Angelo Russell, one of the more confusing players. D'Lo has the ability to play like one of the best guards in the league, a sharpshooter that can create for other players, but his shooting is very inconsistent, and when his jumper isn't falling, the rest of his game gets much worse. He can play on and off ball though, and was a key reason to the Lakers' late season resurgence. Sixth Man of the Year, Naz Reid is 93rd. A player of his size should not be able to move that well. He's good on both ends of the court, and when Cat went down, Naz stepped up in a huge way to keep Minnesota fighting with OKC and Denver at the top of the West, and was a big reason for the Timberwolves making their first conference finals in decades. Denny Avdija ranks 92nd, a two-way guy that made his impact shown this year. Denny developed a three-point shot and is a physical but good finisher. He's also a lengthy defender that stays in front of his man and has playmaking capabilities when given the ball, getting him into the most improved player conversations. Despite not being the best player on the team, there is an argument to be made that he was the most valuable Wizard this season. Austin Reeves is at 91, a great backup shot creator for a Lakers team that benefited heavily when giving Reeves the ball more. He's a underrated finisher and not scared of the moment in the clutch with some notable plays. The Lakers would not have made the playoffs without Reeves' emergence last season. 90 is Colin Sexton, who finally stayed healthy and Utah got to see just how good he is. Sexton is a pest defensively and plays with an intensity on both sides of the ball that not many players have. He's a great playmaker and also just had his most efficient shooting season yet, at least when accounting for volume, making him a key piece for the next era of the Jazz. At 89, PJ Washington has made a name for himself in this year's playoffs. In Charlotte, he was able to rack up better counting stats, but in the postseason, he was a huge reason that Dallas made it past Oklahoma City, with his outlier shooting and taking advantage of smaller defenders on drives, and has been a made defender for Dallas alongside Derrick Jones Jr. CJ McCollum ranks 88th, as he just had the best shooting season of his career, finishing at 42.9% on 8.4 attempts a game from deep, the highest percentage at that volume, and he has played some smart basketball, but unfortunately he has had yet another disappointing postseason performance, shooting 7 for 23 in the 2 playing games and 41.9% while having 4 turnovers a game in the sweep to OKC. Tyler Hero ranks 87th after an injury-riddled season, playing around half of Miami's games, and with Jimmy and Rozier out, Hero was the first option in the playoffs and struggled against opponent Celtics defense. But he is a perennial 20-point per game guy with some backup playmaking capabilities and can knock down threes at a high my right. Hero enters the offseason not knowing his role for next year or potentially even what team he will be on. Two-way Bobby Portis gets the 86th spot as he was a 6th Man of the Year finalist for the second consecutive season. He shot 40% from deep this year and in the playoffs was able to scale up his numbers to fill in for Giannis's absence. But the Bucks went out in the first round again, another disappointing exit for a team that won a championship just a few years ago. After what seemed like a rough year, Jordan Poole ranks 85th, but he showed flashes to end the season. When moved to the bench and after Tyus went out back to the starting lineup, Poole had the ball in his hands more. When moved to the bench and after Tyus went out back to the starting lineup, Poole had the ball in his hands more and was putting up numbers to end the year that only Luka and DeJounte were reaching. Under new coach Keefe, he showed more defensive effort, but next year will be huge to see if Washington is actually his home. Jalen Johnson is 84th, but was one of the most improved players, and if not for injuries, would have gotten some MIP votes. Just one season ago, he averaged less than 15 minutes and 5.6 points, but he is now a lengthy two-way piece for Atlanta moving forward. Johnson is versatile defensively, being able to guard 1 through 4 and sometimes even the 5, a multifaceted scorer and was much needed on the boards. Chris Middleton lands at the 83rd spot. He is clearly not the same player he was during the 2021 title run, but he helps the Bucks so much. Middleton is a team-first guy that sacrifices touches for teammates like Dame, but still finds ways to succeed and work defensively. At 82, RJ Barrett is back in Canada, but now as a Raptor, and it was amazing. Post-trade, Barrett improved statistically in nearly every category, including averaging north of 20 in the short sample size. He worked well in whatever role the constantly changing Raptors put him in and was unstoppable in transition while showing more defensive potential. Next year will be fun for RJ believers, and if he can replicate this Raptors stretch, then StarJ will skyrocket up this list. Marcus Smart ranks 81st, but this was a year to forget for the Grizzlies. They were drowned in different injuries all year, and Smart played just 20 games, but in a bigger offensive role, averaged his career high in points. Smart is one of the best perimeter defenders of this era, even winning the 2022 Defensive Player of the Year, and will be a great fit next to Ja and Bane next season. Derek Lively gets 80th in just his rookie season. Lively has been the third most impactful player on the Western Champs Mavs, consistently closed games as a rookie, and is a force inside. He has defensive versatility as a 7-footer and is one of the smartest players at his age, making the right reads in the 4-on-3 short roll. Dallas doesn't get to the finals without Lively playing this good. At 79, Emmanuel Quickley also took a jump in Toronto like RJ. He became a key piece of the offense and was great, averaging 6.8 assists in that stretch and showing when he got to the bigger role he could thrive. He shot 39% with Toronto, and the previous 6th Man of the Year candidate will now be the starter for a growing Toronto core. Miles Bridges slots in at 78, averaging a career-high 21 points per game and 7.3 rebounds. He is a force inside and has a serviceable three-point shot that gives him more spacing inside, with the potential to be a high 30s to low 40s type of shooter like in the 2021 season. Bridges, alongside LaMelo and Miller, is building a solid core in Charlotte. Devin Vassell ranks 77th, but there is a big chance that number drops next season. The flashes he showed last year appeared even bigger this season. Vassell is a multi-level scorer with tons of playmaking capabilities, and after a growing stretch with Wemby, the second half of the year made that even better. He averaged 21 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds on nearly 40% from 3 in the final 33 games, combined with a big jump defensively and team that will only get better with Wembanyama. Vassell will have a breakout year in 2025. I have Dante DiVincenzo at 76th, and that feels disrespectful. Dante had a breakout year with the greatest shooting season in franchise history, making 283 threes, the third most in the league, and broke the single-game Knicks three-point record. His spacing added another element to a Knicks team that dealt with injuries, but he also got much better as a playmaker and someone that could be trusted on ball and in the clutch, making one of the most notable shots ever by a Knick. Jaden McDaniels ranks 75th. He's one of the best defenders in the league, and alongside guys like Rudy Gobert, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Ant, Minnesota can shut down teams like Denver. He has also improved over the last couple years offensively, this season shooting 43% on threes in the playoffs while being a fearsome driver and being a key reason for the Wolves making the conference finals. They got KD, we got Jaden McDaniels. At 74 is Jeremy Grant. On a young and bad Blazers team, he can't impact winning much, but with some players injured, he took on a larger offensive role and was a consistent piece for Portland. He shot 40% from 3 and will hopefully get to a contending team soon. Alex Caruso gets the 73rd spot. Once just a meme player has turned into one of the most valuable players compared to what counting stats show, though he did reach a double-digit point average for the first time. Caruso was one of the best defensive guards and is really a pest on that side of the ball, leading the league in deflections per game while taking a massive offensive jump led by stellar three-point shooting. Brook Lopez is at 72. Despite starting his career as a back-to-the-basket center, he is now 36 years old and excelling as a shooter, knocking down 36.6% of his 5.1 threes a game. Lopez is also still a great rim protector and helps alleviate rim protection rotation duties from the Bucks star Giannis. This is his second consecutive season playing 78 or more games and 2,300 or more minutes after a back surgery that led to him playing just 13 games in the 21-22 season. Miles Turner, who sits at 71, is a similar player to Lopez. He's one of the best shot blockers and can space the floor as a center, which works very well in a Hallie-led fast offense. Turner was also great in the Halliburton pick and roll and has the ability to roll and pop, which gives it so much flexibility. Additionally, he was very good in the playoffs, which made the Game 3 back spasms so much harder to see when he was ruled out. Maybe a controversial pick, but Jalen Green is 70th. Just looking at counting stats, it doesn't look like Green had a great season, but he showed plenty of flashes. From February 29th to March 29th, Green averaged 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists on a mind-blowing 48.8, 42.2, 78.2 splits, and was probably just one game away from winning Player of the Month. His shot creation is on different levels, and he makes incredibly tough shots that make him one of the most exciting players to watch, and hopefully that stretch isn't just a fluke. He can continue torching the league next year. Brandon Miller at the 69 spot shut up all the haters this year, proving that he should have been the second pick. Miller averaged north of 17 points and made 184 threes, fourth most ever by a rookie, though he didn't play like one. Miller played like a vet, as a smart player who consistently got better on both ends of the floor and could be the main focus in Charlotte very soon. Miller will most likely be at worst a top 50 player by the end of next season. Anthony Simons takes 68th, an athletic guard that numbers may not show his real talent. He is in a weird position, as he probably isn't the future of this Blazers team, with Scoot and Shadon waiting, but has put up some good but inefficient numbers recently. He has some nice shot making, but maybe on the trade block within the next couple years. Herb Jones gets 67th. He came extremely close to a 50-40-90 season as one of the best Pelicans players. Specifically, Herb was one of the best defenders. He was versatile and genuinely great on the perimeter, leading a solid Pelicans defense and making first team all defense and finished top 5 in DPOY voting. At just 25, he's a key piece for a New Orleans team that with a healthy Zion is very dangerous. Draymond Green gets the benefit of the doubt and lands at 66th. He's still a great defensive player as a leader that roams around, but heavily impacts a rough Warriors defense, as they are terrible without him. He's also a good screen setter and makes good decisions with the ball. Unfortunately, he's past his peak, and interesting decisions he makes has knocked him out of many games and even got suspended, leaving him as one of the biggest question marks on a game-by-game basis. Josh Hart takes the 65th place. He's an engine, just doing everything a team needs at 110% effort all the time. Hart is a monster on the boards despite standing at 6'4". Now, do you need another playmaker behind Brunson? Hart can do that. Need a guy to guard the other team's best player for every second of the game? Yeah, he's not coming out. Need a big three in a close playoff game? Hart can knock those down. A jack of all trades went crazy in this year's playoffs, continuing a career year that made him an everyday starter under Tibbs. At 64, Bradley Beal took a much different role this season. Next to two of the best scorers, Book and KD, Beal didn't need to score like he did in Washington. Instead, he had the best defensive season of his career, a part of his game that was heavily shamed in the past. He also took more of a playmaking role and did things aside from being a main scoring option, completely changing from the old Beal. Kobe White gets to 63rd after achieving 32 first place votes for most improved, second only to Maxey. Pretty much everything did improve. White got more touches and a bigger responsibility with Levine out, and he did amazing. Shooting better, scoring better, becoming a better playmaker. Not all players actually get better when you give them more touches. Kobe became one of the best guards in the league and a guy that can go toe-to-toe with nearly anyone. In the last spot in the bottom tier, Fred VanVleet gets 62nd. He had a great season, averaging a career high in assists as a very good playmaker next to a lot of guys that can get a bucket and help players like Sengun, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson, and Jabari Smith Jr. grow. He played 73 games and had one of the more efficient seasons of his career, making him one of the most underrated players of 2024. Kyle Kuzma at 61 has the build of a great player. At 6'10 and willing to shoot while being mobile, Kuz should be a star. Turns out he's just really inefficient. He was the Wizards' best player, but wasn't even the most valuable, as in the clutch he demanded the ball too much and it really didn't work out. Whether it was missing threes he shouldn't have shot, or just making the wrong playmaking decision, but there was not much he could have done to save this disaster of a Wizards team. DeJounte Murray ranks 60th, though this offseason will be interesting for him. Without Trae Young, his stats were great at the end of the year, but that was a first option. And his defense has declined tremendously since his Spurs days. Murray is still a good playmaker and can score inside, but the trade for him looks to be very disappointing for Atlanta. 59 is Drew Holiday. Drew has been a key part of Boston's elite defense as a bigger body that can guard multiple positions and won't get bullied in the post but can also knock away plenty of balls. The Celtics may not make it to the finals without him. Drew made all-defensive second team this year, his fourth consecutive appearance on an all-defensive team, showing his value on that side of the ball. He's also a backup offensive creator, helping a JT, JB, and White, and though he may not be the all-star player he once was or put up gaudy numbers, he's impactful offensively and a big part of Boston with their short main six-man rotation. Michael Porter Jr. sits at 58. There wasn't much new about this season for MPJ, but he thrived at what he's good at and played his role for Denver. He shot 42.9% from deep and made some big and contested shots for the Nuggets and is a lengthy point of attack defender that alleviates defensive pressure off guys like Murray and Jokic. Most notably, he would play 81 games this year, and for a guy that has plenty of back injuries during his basketball career, that shows just how far he has come durability-wise. Evan Mobley got the 57th place. He's one of the most versatile big defenders in the league and a great rim protector, placing third in DPOY voting last season with a growing three-point shot. But Mobley cannot rank too high as his impact was questioned this season. The Cavs went on their best stretch with Mobley out and Allen as the only big man. And the two big lineups without much spacing in the clutch do not help Spida and Garland drive. How effective and needed is Mobley on this Cavs team, and could he be the odd man out if there is changes within the core? Cade Cunningham slots in at 56. Though he was on the worst team in the league as Detroit finished with just 14 wins, Cade has shown flashes. He has an all-around offensive game with the shooting to space the floor and on-ball handling and playmaking to serve as the first option, and can be a great pick-and-roll leader, but it isn't at an elite level yet, and his three-point shooting isn't consistent enough to put him much higher. Aaron Gordon gets the 55th spot. AG is a bully inside as one of the best fits next to Jokic in the dunker spot and can get out in transition and finish through loads of contact. Can also drive on his own and handle the ball very well from his Magic days while forcing contested shots defensively, as he is very smart and being in the Nuggets system most likely helps a lot. Gordon has found his home in Denver. Mikal Bridges takes the 54th spot. He may not be the 25 point per game guy that some fans thought he was after last season, but the type of player that Mikal is can be used on almost every team. He's a 3-and-D wing but can create shots for himself and is an efficient 20 point per game player. He has also played great defense for multiple teams and is willing to guard the opposing team's best player. OG Anunoby ranks 53rd. He's arguably the best point of attack defender in the league, a lockdown guy that can knock the ball out and create transition opportunities, but players just don't score on OG. He can also knock down some shots and get physical offensively to create shots inside. In New York, OG will be one of the most important defenders and was heavily missed throughout his injury. The dunk contest legend played just 25 games this year, but he is a very solid three-point shooter and an athletic and exciting finisher. He's a two-time All-Star, but not counting this season, has averaged 23 or more 5 times in a row. Chicago did have their best stretch without him, as Bulls guard Caruso and Kobe White were previously mentioned on this list, and LaVine could be on the trade block soon. Derek White is 51st, but he's probably much more valuable than that. White is genuinely good at everything on a basketball court, and though he might not excel at much, he can do everything Boston asks. He's a good playmaker, can shoot the three ball, is smart on both sides, drive and kick if he needs to considering this Boston offense, and is a great defender, making all defensive second team for the last 2 years. His on-off numbers are great, showing the impact he has on a Celtics team that is one of the best of all time. Kristaps Porzingis gets the 50th spot. The Unicorn has been a great addition to the Boston Celtics, a floor spacer on offense that gives the Celtics so much offensive spacing. For a team built on collapsing the defense and kicking out for threes, KP fits so much better in that system than a guy like Robert Williams. KP was also durable in the regular season, and after returning from injuries in the playoffs has had a great start to the finals. Darius Garland is 49. This was a very disappointing season for the Cavs point guard, but to be fair, he had a weird injury in the beginning of the year that most likely affected his whole season. As with a broken jaw, he couldn't eat solid foods for a while. He wasn't aggressive all year, and the team had their best stretch without Garland, as Cleveland nearly lost to the Magic in the first round, then got killed by injuries in the second round and fell to Boston, as Garland's future with the Cavaliers has been questioned. Franz Wagner gets the 48th spot, and I would be shocked if he doesn't have a solidly better ranking next year. His three-point shot was seemingly taken away, and in December, Paolo cemented himself as the number one in the offense. Franz still hasn't had his best season yet. He averaged a career-high 19.7 points per game, very close to that 20 mark, and was still very efficient doing it. He's a key player on defense for a Magic team that was elite defensively, and his 6'10 frame as a small forward that is mobile gives him versatility, and he will get even better as a second option. LaMelo Ball is at 47, and that doesn't feel right. He's such a talented player, and the last 2 years fans thought he was taking the leap whenever he played. He was an all-star and took the Hornets to the play-in in just his second season, his last healthy year, and the last 2 years he averaged 23 and 8 or more, but played to come on 58 games. LaMelo is an elite offensive engine, able to generate good looks for guys like Mark Williams and a creative scorer, but he cannot stay healthy, and that is a key factor in this ranking. Jarrett Allen takes the 46th spot. Allen is a top 5 rim deterrer at worst and is the main factor in the Cavaliers defense that has Evan Mobley. Players don't even want to drive to the rim, and when they do, he heavily affects the shot and is a huge reason for the Cavs' 6th best defensive rating throughout all their injuries. He's a solid finisher, and after last year's rough playoffs, averaged 17 points and 14 rebounds on a playoff-leading 67.6% from the field against the Magic before he got injured. Jaren Jackson Jr. is at 45. The 2023 Defensive Player of the Year is one of the only Grizzlies players to stay relatively healthy, finishing with 66 games. And he averaged a career-high 22.5 points and 2.3 assists with a solid 3-point shot, but his defense is the real story. He's the main part of a Grizzlies defense that ranked 12th in defensive rating despite being the most injured squad, and last year they were 2nd. Everyone on the court gets better defensively with Triple J. His teammate Desmond Bane lands at 44. He played only 42 games but helped this terrible team when he could play. Bane was one of just few shot creators on the team, and the most experienced, as someone like G.G. Jackson is just 19. He's an elite shooter but works better as a second option next to Ja instead of as a main ball handler, and next season will be better for him and Memphis. DeMar DeRozan is at 43. DeMar did everything for the Bulls team that does not deserve him. He stepped up as a more all-around player and led the Bulls, who had some changes with Kobe White becoming a more important player offensively, and LaVine missing time to the 9 seed and a play-in appearance. DeMar was again one of the best fourth quarter players, and he can get to the line at ease. He is not the same player as he was in Toronto, but still a very valuable guy, and this ranking is probably too low for him. And it will be interesting to see if he stays in Chicago next year. After just his first season, Chet Holmgren at 42 is in the all-star caliber tier. Chet is a two-way star and is durable after playing 82 games this year. He's a very good rim protector inside and provides stretch minutes at the 5 that help this Thunder offense play through its star Shea, giving him more space to drive. Chet can put the ball on the floor as a backup option, and his shooting is elite at that position. The era of unicorns is here, and Chet is one of the best. James Harden narrowly misses the top 40. He's a roller coaster of a player, though he doesn't have the same first step or athleticism he once did. Harden is still a very good offensive engine and can put up some great numbers. But will you get that Harden? This is now 2 straight playoffs of Harden's consistency, saving and also ending his team's season. He isn't taking up as much offensive responsibility as he used to, which helps his team, but at 34 years old, the Beard may finish as one of the greatest to never win a title. Lauri Markkanen ranks 40th. He's a guy that will work on any competing team, but currently showing his talent in Utah. A 3-point sniper that can make things happen for himself off ball at 7 foot is a type of player that teams yearn to have. He can drive inside and is not a bad defender, but what is holding him back is his own shot creation. If Lauri were to become half of what he is off ball in isolation, then he becomes an instant top 30 candidate. Scottie Barnes takes the 39th pick, and we may have seen how good he can be this year. He made his first All-Star game as a 28-6 guy with some very good defense. He's a smart player with some good shot creation and has the ability to take over games just like what we hoped when he was drafted 4th overall. But Barnes didn't really get better as the first option after the Siakam trade. He did show flashes like his success in the pick and roll, but whether he can be that first option is still a huge question mark. Jalen Williams is currently 38th, and I think he will be an all-star next season. His scoring at just his second season is game-breaking. A great finisher, can score in the mid-range and shot 43% from deep. He can score in isolation, transition, or off-ball. He will be a 25-point-per-game guy soon and already got more efficient as he shot more. His scalability is not something to be worried about. He's already a most improved player candidate in year 2, and the Thunder needed that, as his rush showing against Dallas was a huge reason they lost. For OKC to succeed, they will need J-Dub to get better, and there's no doubt in my mind that he won't be a top 25 guy very soon. Domantas Sabonis is very likely much lower than you thought at 37th. Sabonis has been a key piece in the Kings finally making the playoffs last year, and this season falling just 1 game short, but he's incredibly overrated. Sabonis is not an elite playmaker like some may think, with inflated assist numbers from DHOs and not actually making things happen with his passing. He isn't that great of a scorer for someone who has 90% of their volumes from 2s, and his rebound numbers aren't actually indicative of how good he is, with constant push-offs and the rest of his rotation not being good rebounders. He's He's a cone on defense, and it is a genuine shock that he got votes for MVP and DPOY. Sabonis is a really good player, but not that top 30 guy people think he is. Brandon Ingram lands at 36th after his worst year with the Pelicans yet. Ingram can get to his spots and score over players like very few can, which makes him such a mesmerizing player and makes his value shown everywhere, but he has yet to play 65 games since his rookie year, before LeBron was even on the Lakers. This is his second down three-point shooting season, but his on-ball playmaking has gotten better. He also had a terrible playoffs just 2 years after he averaged 27.66 on 40% three-point shooting. But when will the Zion and BI experiment end, or will New Orleans give them more chances after their playoff appearance despite Zion's play and injury? Pascal Siakam achieves the 35th spot. He started out the season as the 1A next to Scottie in Toronto, but finished in the Eastern Conference Finals. He's one of the best finishers in the league, and playing next to Haliburton makes that even better. His shooting capabilities alongside Turner also allow Indy to space the floor much better, and he should have a few more years of his prime with an encouraging Pacers squad. Alperen Sengun lands at 34, and the future is very bright for the Rockets center. He averaged 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists, and one of just 6 players to reach those marks. He's one of few centers with this level of playmaking, as he can lead the fast break, score in different ways, especially in the post, and was willing to launch the three, a part of his game that will grow in the future. He has improved defensively and got all-star considerations this season, and though he went down with an injury, he will be ready next season as the Rockets look to make the playoffs for the first time since James Harden. Tyrese Maxey lands at 33. Maxey might be the perfect second option next to Joel Embiid. He can score on his own and is one of the league's best snipers and a good finisher. As a secondary offensive engine, Maxey works very well, and for a team that was forced to trade Harden, he fills so many gaps as a shot creator and main playmaker for a Sixers team that has had plenty of off-ball shooters at its disposal. The most improved player hit some huge shots in the playoffs, and though he couldn't replicate his same success as the first option, the Maxey and Embiid pairing is something for Philly to build on in the future. Knicks forward Julius Randle, who's 32nd, has made his third All-Star appearance in his last 4 seasons. Though he only played 46 games, he still deserves the spot. He finishes physical inside, and though it may not look the prettiest, he is effective. Brunson has taken over as the permanent one, but Randle now gets to work as the second option with less responsibility, but is still very effective. He's a capable playmaker on a team that has already had multiple good ones in JB and Hart, which will just give New York more flexibility. Rudy Gobert gets the 31st spot, and though some people may think it's too high or too low, there isn't much explaining. Rudy is a complete negative offensively. No, the fadeaway over Jokic doesn't make him a positive on that end, but he is a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, and for good reason. He's the best rim deterrer we have seen in recent memory and single-handedly gave Cat a defensive surge. He can transform any bad defense to a good one and a good defense to all-time levels. Players can't drive on him, and no, he didn't get taken advantage of much in the playoffs. He was one of the few reasons Dallas didn't pull away in the conference finals and was a big reason for Jamal Murray's bad series. Paul George sneaks into the top 30. He is a jack of all trades, a tough shot creator and good perimeter defender, but is past his peak. His athleticism isn't the same as his Indiana days. He cannot play make much compared to players in the same tier, and his inconsistency in the playoffs plagues the Clippers. This year, he averaged just 19.5 points on 41% as LA fell in the first round despite seeming like a legit title contender earlier this season. Karl Anthony Towns takes the 29th spot. Cat had arguably his most impactful season. Minnesota made the Western Conference Finals, and throughout the playoffs, he had some massive games, including being the key reason for Minnesota's only win against Dallas. He had his best defensive year so far next to Gobert, as the Wolves finished with the best defensive rating. He is still an elite three-point shooter and is adapted with Ant as the first option. De'Aaron Fox finished 28th. What was maybe the best start to his season was ruined by a broken finger, but he's shooting at an elite rate, something that may be more important next season. He's a great ball handler and someone that can score well in transition and knock balls away defensively, but cannot be as good of a first option as some guys above him on the list, as the Kings missed the playoffs after getting the 3 seed last year. Jamal Murray gets 27th. This year he was really expected to take the full season leap, but it was a slightly disappointing year from him. He would again miss out on an all-star team, but we know he's a playoff performer, so at least he can do that again, right? Well, it wasn't great. He would hit some clutch game winners over the Lakers, but aside from those shots was terrible. He would finish with his playoff career lows in field goal and three-point percentage, as well as points per game at just 20.6. He was injured with ankle and elbow issues, but for a player that is known as a playoff guy, it wasn't a great year for the Canadian guard. Damian Lillard falls to 26th. Can he be higher? Yes. Is this probably a few spots too low? Also yes. But what a terrible season Dame just had. Statistically, the 22-23 season was Dame's best regular season, but in Milwaukee, he was not good. The mix between him and Giannis never really worked as their chemistry never developed. The pick and roll usage was inconsistent at best, and the Bucks season ended in the first round again with Lillard missing 2 of those 6 games. At the 25th spot, Paolo Banchero is the future. The Magic's power forward led a Magic team to the playoffs and a Game 7 against the Cavs, despite this Orlando squad having lowly expectations coming into the year. He's the closest player we have seen to LeBron since the King entered the league, and a player at that stature and 6'10", 250 of pure muscle being able to do everything on the court, score inside at will, convert at a nice rate from deep, and be a growing and very good passer, an on-ball playmaker, and one of the least talked about elite defenders in the league. Making an all-star appearance in his second year isn't normal. He got out of his early season slump in December and had some of the most notable clutch performances. Paolo will be top 10 within the next 2 to 3 seasons. Kyrie Irving ranks 24th, which to be honest doesn't look so good after the starts of the finals. He is one of the best shot creators in the league though, and a generationally great tough finisher, as once he gets to the paint there isn't much you can do to stop him. He's a lead in the fourth and has played some of his best defense in this playoff run, with great stretches in the first round against the Clippers and conference finals against Minnesota, but also ghosted against OKC and has been a main reason for the 3-0 deficit against Boston. Jaylen Brown takes the 23rd position. He has arguably been the Celtics' best player in this finals run, as they sit just 1 game away from hosting the Larry O'Brien Trophy. And by the time you see this, he might have already won. He has been tasked with guarding Luka, though screens usually get him away, and he has been amazing on the offensive side of the ball. This team makes very few mistakes, and he can kick the ball out, but is also a very capable scorer. After one of the worst series of his career compared to the expectations set last year, he has had his best playoff run yet, winning Eastern Conference Finals MVP and potentially NBA Finals MVP. Zion Williamson gets the 22nd spot. Zion had the best overall year of his career, despite not making an All-Star game. He became a more complete player, was a solid defender using his size inside, and was able to play 70 games, a career high. He drove inside at a higher rate than ever, and was a good finisher and improved playmaker. We even got to see a glimpse of playoff Zion, with him scoring 40, 11, and 5 in slightly over 3/4 of a play-in matchup, then would unfortunately leave early, but was going against the entire Lakers squad and kept the Pelicans close. Bam Adebayo just misses out on top 20. He's one of the best defenders in the league and one of the best who have never won DPOY, and just made his first all-defensive team this year. He's an excellent rim protector with versatility that few centers have, and though is limited offensively due to his lack of a 3-point shot, he spaces the floor in different ways, as he is one of the best screen setters and has a very good midi. He can also pass very well for a center. Now his peak is limited because of his 3-point shot, but he's still undoubtedly a top 5 center. After a roller coaster of a year, Tyrese Haliburton lands at 20. To start the year, Hallie was on fire, a top 10 guy at worst, can launch the ball from anywhere, and was putting up numbers we have never seen before. But he would suffer a hamstring injury and fall off a cliff, but still played, just badly, as he was trying to reach the 65 game mark. As Indiana also took a fall and his shooting went away, people wondered if the early season run was a fluke, but in the playoffs he would be amazing. Despite playing through some injuries, he helped the Pacers to get to the conference finals, and he took over some games where he was just aggressive. Hallie would end up sitting at the end of the series as the injuries were just too much, but as an offensive engine, he is elite, and the lack of defense get covered by how good he is offensively. Trae Young is right above Haliburton, and though people may think this is controversial, Trae is just a bit better than Hallie in my opinion, and this is no disrespect to Haliburton. I love him as a player. But as offensive engines, they are very similar. Haliburton is more efficient, but Trae has done this with less and has also made a conference finals, even though it was a few years ago, and I know Indy did this year, but it's not like they haven't had much different success. And they did it against arguably better opponents, as the Bucks and Knicks weren't healthy on Haliburton's run. Trae is also a slightly better defender, as he has come up huge in clutch on numerous occasions. Now he may be on the trade block, and as a basketball fan, a Trae Wemby pairing would be extremely fun, but might also break the league. Speaking of Victor Wembanyama, he gets the 18th spot, and this does feel too low. He's going to be one of the greatest players ever to touch a basketball, and potentially already currently top 10 by next year. He's one of the best rim deterrers as a rookie we have ever seen, a rimmer defensively that was solidly in DPOY voting. As a rookie, led the Spurs to the 22nd best defensive rating despite being dead last year, and led the league in blocks per game. Again, as a rookie, scoring 21.4 points with a great deep range shot, making 128 threes and 10.6 rebounds despite media members and fans questioning his rebounding before the season started, and is already one of the best big man passers with a smart IQ and is able to just pass over anyone. Again, this is all as a rookie. The Spurs and Wemby got way better as the season went on, and this is still without a legit playmaker alongside him. He might just destroy the league in a few seasons. Kawhi Leonard finishes 17th, but he's one of the weirdest players to rank because he can be a top 10 or even top 5 guy, but can he stay healthy? This was the first time since 2017 that Kawhi played more than 60 games, and in the playoffs he only played 2 of 6 and was very clearly injured in those 2. He's a two-way wing with elite shot creation and is locked down. Nobody's questioning his talent, but the clock cannot stay on the court, and that may lead to the Clippers' experiment ending soon. Devin Booker is at 16, a candidate for the best shooting guard in the world, but it is just hard to rank him much higher. He's a great shot creator for himself, but proved this year that he cannot operate as the main playmaker, though does thrive in his secondary role. He's a very solid defender and proven he can win as the best player on the 2021 Suns, who made the finals, but it is fair to ask if he can make that jump consistently being a top 10 player. Jimmy Butler ranks 15th, and this is solely because of his previous playoff performances. Regular season Jimmy's alright, a fringe all-star that does just enough for Miami to make the playoffs, but get to that next stage and his potential is mind-blowing. Butler can single-handedly win games, including defeating the 1-seed Bucks last year en route to his second finals appearance in 4 years, with a 56-pointer in a round 1 victory. His two-way skill and ability to go for 100 for 48 minutes in the playoffs is incredibly rare, and as such a good tough shot maker, he's the perfect playoff performer. Donovan Mitchell finishes at 14 after another amazing season. He made his 5th consecutive All-Star game and continued proving how dynamic of a scorer he is, and how good of an offensive engine he can be. From January 3rd to February 10th, a stretch where Garland and Mobley missed a lot of time, the Cavs went 17-1, and Mitchell had an average net rating of plus 15.4. He averaged 28.5 points, 7 assists, and 5.1 rebounds alongside 1.8 steals on 50, 38, 82 splits. He was by far the best player in the second round against the Celtics and has arguably played the best in the playoffs against a historically great Boston team. Ja Morant ranks 13th after a forgettable season that finished with Ja playing just 9 games, but he had his moments, including a game winner in his first game back from suspension. Many people may think Morant is ranked too high, but he really hasn't even regressed from that 2022 season. He's one of the most dynamic and exciting finishers, throwing highlight dunks, but also just a creative player near the rim, and his playmaking has taken leaps since that year and averaged over 8 assists the last 2 seasons. He is capable of knocking down the 3, and his athleticism and speed can break down defenses. Ja's defensive miscues are also hidden by Jaren Jackson Jr., and if he happens to get out in transition, you aren't stopping him. Anthony Davis squeezes in the superstar tier at 12. AD played a career high 76 games, silencing the critics around his durability concerns, and took on a heavy defensive responsibility. This team's defense was not good. D'Lo and Reeves are not good defensively, and the Lakers' best perimeter defender, Jared Vanderbilt, played just 29 games on an average of 20 minutes, but Davis did everything to help this team compete, and finished with 12.6 boards a game, 3rd highest. His three-point shot is still gone from 2020 and before, but he was dominant in the post and showed some playmaking promise. His teammate LeBron James sits 11th, and yes, this is low, but it isn't exactly equal to what he is capable of. We all know how good LeBron is. Though he isn't at his peak anymore, he can still take over a game in different ways, whether it is launching threes from 5 feet behind the line, driving inside through contact, or consistently finding the open man. He's arguably the greatest offensive player and really just person to touch a basketball ever. But the problem is he can't do that every night. At 39 years old, LeBron consistently takes plays off and even games off, and that isn't to fault him. LeBron needs to do that because of his age. But when you get to the superstar tier, if you're that inconsistent with playing at 100 and barely being able to do it consistently, other players will be ranked higher. Jalen Brunson gets the 10th spot as he cemented himself as a superstar and face of the Knicks this postseason. After some key trades around the turn of the calendar, the Knicks went crazy. And despite constant injuries, whether it's Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart, Bojan Bogdanovic, or even himself, Brunson would keep performing at an elite level, genuinely getting better with more defensive attention. He's one of the best operators in the pick and roll we have ever seen, an elite mid-range and inside finisher, while he has also shot over 40% from deep in both years in New York. He would finish top 5 in MVP voting and made All-NBA second team, but the playoffs was when he really went crazy. Averaging 42 points and 10 assists across the final 4 games of the Sixer series, multiple 40-pointers against Indy, it took Brunson and really the entire Knicks team getting injured for them to finally lose. But Brunson put this team on his back, and he is able to be the 1A on a title team. Just like Brunson, Anthony Edwards at the 9th spot has become a superstar this year, and especially in the playoffs. Yes, Ant still has his criticisms. His decision-making, particularly when doubled, is questionable at best and lost some games in the conference finals because of it in the clutch. His defense isn't always great, and he cannot guard the best player on his team and still perform great offensively, but very few can. And if you were to put a young D Wade in today's game, then give him an outside shot, you get Ant. He's one of the best finishers in the league, up there with the likes of Luka and Ja, and can dunk over anyone. His trash talking is elite and has the ability to win games on his own, like sweeping the Phoenix Suns while averaging 31, 8, and 6 on 51, 44, 84 splits. Kevin Durant gets the 8th spot. KD was asked to do a lot for a poorly constructed Phoenix team, and he stepped up and then some. Durant played in 75 games, most since 2019 with Golden State, and had a lot of offensive responsibility, which he fulfilled. KD averaged 27 points while finishing close to 50, 40, 90, and was genuinely playing like a top 5 player through the first few months. He was also tasked with more defensive responsibility on a team that lacked some guys on that end, and had one of his best seasons on that side of the ball in a while, creating some good statistical lineups with Nurkic. He isn't the same player as he used to be and got swept in the first round, but Durant is an underrated offensive engine and defender and can still be the first option on a title team. Steph Curry lands at 7 after a disappointing year for him and the Warriors. He has some durability concerns and isn't as good of a defensive player, as well as not being able to carry a lacking roster as he was a couple years ago in the 2021 and 2022 seasons. Curry is the greatest shooter ever, and in a down year still shot a considerable amount, over 40% from 3, and led the league for the 8th time in threes made with 357. Second place, Luka Doncic at 284. The gap between Steph and second place is larger than the gap between second place and 17th. This is a down shooting year for him. His off-ball playmaking generates looks for other players, and he stepped up big in the clutch tons of times this year, something about Curry that has been heavily criticized before. He might not be the same player as he used to be, but he carried a terrible Warriors team to the play-in and is one of the greatest players we have ever seen. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is at 6. Another great season landed Shai in MVP conversations, finishing second in voting as made first-team All-NBA in back-to-back years. The Thunder took one of the biggest jumps, getting the first seed in one of the best conferences in recent memory, and had a very good playoff burst, showing that he can replicate the success when it matters. He's one of the best at getting to the rim and converting, and gets the line at elite rate. His post-up and baseline fadeaway is nearly unstoppable and won the Thunder big games with that. He has a growing three-point shot, and that combined with the Thunder going 5 out with Chet at center gives SGA so much space to drive where he thrives. He also racks up stocks, and though he may not be an all-defensive type guy, he can make plays happen on the defensive end, which matters a lot for a team that gets out in transition as often as the Thunder. Jason Tatum lands at the 5th spot. He hasn't been putting up crazy stats in the playoffs and has been very inefficient in the finals so far, but he has done everything Boston needs to win, and has been a very underrated playoff player throughout his career. Tatum has been an excellent playmaker, initiating the Celtics offensive system perfectly by driving in and kicking to the right player, finishing game 2 with 12 assists despite Boston not being able to hit a shot. He is a very good defensive player, and though he does settle for sidestep threes too much, he's an overall stud offensively. Tatum has proven he can have huge games in the playoff, like a 51-pointer in Game 7 last year, and too much of the discourse surrounding him is reactionary. No, Tatum hasn't took over in the finals yet, but he has consistently been a top 5 to 10 guy and has shown he can go crazy in the playoffs. He just doesn't need to with how good the Celtics team is. Joel Embiid is the 4th best player in his own tier. He is easily better than the players below him in the superstar tier, but has too many negatives to put him in the top 3. He has not made a conference finals, but to be fair, he actually played good in this playoffs. Embiid is also constantly injured, especially in the playoffs, which is a reason for the lack of postseason success, and is one of the biggest foul baiters in recent memory. But on the other hand, Embiid is just dominant on offense. He's one of the best playmakers as a center and can score from anywhere on the court. He's too big to stop inside, has a nice post game, and can spot up over nearly anyone. It really got much worse and fell to the plan as Embiid was out, despite being near the top of the East with him healthy, showing his value as he would have won a second consecutive MVP had he not gotten injured. He's also a star in defense as an elite rim protector, but the negatives are just too much for him not to go over anyone in the top 3, but Embiid is a lock in the top 5. Giannis Antetokounmpo is at the 3rd spot. The Greek Freak had his most underrated regular season yet, as he is one of the most unstoppable players we have seen in the paint ever. He shot 77.5% in the restricted area. League average 66.3%. He made 661 field goals there. Second place, 486. He made 9.1 field goals in the restricted area per game. The Miami Heat only made 13.5. This is an all-time great player in that area that people aren't giving him the credit for. Giannis is also a top 5 defender in the league. As a roamer, he has been great and finished top 10 in DPOY voting and made All-NBA first team the last 6 years, the longest active streak in the league. What's holding him back from the other 2 players is just a few things. His playmaking is really good and has improved considerably compared to earlier in his career, but compared to Luka and Jokic, he just isn't close to their level. He also cannot score in many ways aside from his insane ability inside, and he has been injured the last 2 playoffs, playing 3 of 5 games last year and was not as effective as usual, and didn't play a single minute this year. Giannis is absolutely great and a top 3 player, but slightly worse than these next 2 players. Luka Doncic is ranked at number 2 with a legit case at the best in the world. Luka makes things that shouldn't be possible offensively happen. From being able to score literally anywhere and pretty much any way on the court to being one of the best passers we have ever seen in an all-time great offensive engine, his peak is already threatening all-time greats, and has made the last 5 first-team All-NBAs. Luka had a historic stat line of 34, 10, and 9, and did it in in his most efficient shooting season ever, when becoming one of the best three-point shooters when accounting for volume across the association. The stretch from December to January was historic, highlighted by a 73-pointer, and despite fighting through tons of injuries, he has led the Mavs as a 5 seed to the NBA Finals, and is by far the best player so far in the finals. The main criticism around him has been not winning, but he has now gone to multiple conference finals and one final at the age of 25, and defense, and though his defense is inconsistent, he has had some very good stretches this playoffs. Nikola Jokic is the best player in the world, and there isn't much to say about him that hasn't already been said. He's unstoppable on offense, a 7-footer that has the vision of magic and elite touch. He can score from the post, spot up, and is a big and physical driver. He does not get exposed in defensive actions like the pick and roll, as some may say, and though the gap may not be as big from him to second as people used to say, Jokic still takes the #1 spot. If you made it this far, thank you very much. It's probably going to take 20 plus at minimum hours to make, and I've already been recording for an hour so far, so if you could subscribe, that would mean so much as we're trying to hit 1K. If you want to watch more, click on the screen right now, as there is a video about the entire Jason Tatum Celtics era.